Harper Lowe never imagined that a quiet Sunday afternoon inside the gleaming halls of Westlake Center would turn into the kind of moment that explodes across the internet, reshaping the way strangers would speak her name for weeks. She had only wandered into the luxury boutique because the emerald green dress in the front window shimmered in a way that reminded her of childhood afternoons in her grandmother's garden when sunlight sifted through leaves and painted everything in soft green warmth. She was not planning to try it on. She was not even planning to touch it. She simply wanted to look at something beautiful for a moment, something that did not ask her to shrink or apologize or make herself smaller the way so much of the world demanded of women like her. But the store was busy, flooded with tourists and influencers and teens filming hauls for their followers. When Harper stepped inside, holding her tote bag close to her side, a few eyes flicked toward her, some curious, some confused, some amused. She pretended not to notice. She always pretended. At the center of the store, the emerald dress stood on a raised mannequin, surrounded by soft lighting that made it glow like a jewel. Harper stepped toward it, drawn in by the way the fabric caught the light, imagining for one impossible second what it might feel like to wear something so bold, so fearless, so alive. But then a girl barely 19 lifted her phone and pointed it toward Harper with a mischievous smile, and whispered loudly enough for her friends to hear that she was filming a little moment for her followers. Harper froze confused and flustered. She thought the girl was recording the dress. She did not realize the lens was already on her. The salesperson in a crisp blazer looked Harper up and down with a smirk that did not need words to be understood. A cluster of shoppers turned to look, giggling softly, waiting for something to happen. Harper stepped back, her cheeks heating, whispering that she was just looking, just passing by, just trying not to take up space. The girl with the phone said in mock surprise that maybe Harper wanted to try the dress. Maybe she was hoping for a miracle moment. Her friends laughed. The salesperson let the silence stretch in a way that stung more than words. Harper felt the familiar burn of humiliation rise in her chest. She hated that she still reacted like this, hated that strangers could make her feel 12 years old again, standing in a high school locker room holding clothes that never fit. The laughter around her sharpened until she felt it in her bones. Then the door sensor chimed behind her. A man stepped inside. His presence was quiet, yet immediately commanding, the kind of presence that made the air shift even before people recognized him. Declan Ward, the billionaire who rarely appeared in public without security, the man whose name floated through news feeds and business headlines, walked into the boutique wearing a charcoal coat, black sweater, and the expression of someone lost in thought. His hair was slightly tousled, as if the wind had gotten to him on the way in, and there was a gentleness in his walk that did not match the ruthless image the media loved to paint. Harper saw the angle of the TikTok girl's camera turn instantly. Influencers recognized him before most adults did, and the trio squealed a little too loudly as they whispered that he was here, and this might be their chance to film something viral. Declan stopped near a display of jewelry, his eyes drifting across the store before landing on Harper. His expression shifted in a way she could not read. For a moment, she felt naked under the weight of so many glances. But his gaze was not sharp like the others, not judging, not amused. He looked at her as if he sensed the invisible story unfolding around her. Then the influencer zoomed in and whispered that this was perfect. The billionaire walking in at the exact moment everything was about to get good. Harper turned away in embarrassment, wishing the floor might open and swallow her whole. But the salesperson moved closer with a sarcastic smile, asking Harper if she needed help choosing something in her size, or if she was simply admiring things far above her budget. Laughter scattered around the room again. Harper took a step back, her breath tightening as the moment spiraled beyond her control. Declan noticed something in his posture changed. He walked forward slowly, a subtle but protective shift. The influencer gasped softly to her phone that she could not believe what she was about to capture. Then Declan reached Harper, looked from her to the dress, to the smirking crowd, and something sparked in his eyes. Not anger, not pity, but an idea, sudden and bold. He let out a quiet laugh, a warm, unexpected sound that made the room pause. He turned toward the dress, then toward Harper, and said clearly enough for the entire store to hear, "If you can fit in that dress, I will marry you." The room exploded. The influencer screamed, "Oh my God, he is a billionaire." Harper stood, frozen, stunned, breathless, humiliated, confused, and somehow strangely protected all at once. The salesperson choked on her own words. Everyone reached for their phones. And in less than 60 seconds, the moment became a viral clip, racing across TikTok and Instagram, with captions accusing Declan of cruel body shaming. Though Harper knew in her bones his words had not come from cruelty, but from something altogether different. Something she did not yet understand. Harper did not check her phone until she was already halfway home on the bus, gripping the cold metal pole as Seattle drizzle streaked across the windows. In thin gray lines, the world outside, blurring like watercolor, left out in the rain. She told herself she would wait until she reached her apartment, told herself she did not care enough to look, told herself she was not fragile enough to let strangers dictate the rhythm of her breathing. But the nervous electricity under her skin kept nudging her until she finally swiped open her notifications. The screen erupted with alerts, mentions, tags, messages from people she barely remembered meeting. A coworker asking if she was okay, a high school acquaintance sending a laughing emoji, followed by a question mark. A flood of push notifications from apps she rarely used. At the top was a link from her younger cousin, who lived in Oregon, saying, "Oh my God, is this you?" Harper clicked before she could stop herself. The video began abruptly shaky, filmed from the influencer girl's phone. The clip showed Harper standing frozen in front of the emerald dress, eyes wide expression, unguarded, vulnerable, raw. The audio captured the snickers, the whispers, the salesperson, making her dig her nails into her palm. Then Declan entered the frame, that brief moment of quiet gravity before he stepped toward her. The girl filming squealed softly as the clip zoomed in, catching every detail with merciless clarity. And then came the sentence, "If you can fit in that dress, I will marry you." The store gasped. The internet gasped harder. The clip cut to the influencers screaming, "Oh my God, he is a billionaire." Another snippet captured the shocked laughter in the store, the reaction of the staff. Harper blinking as if the world had tilted under her feet. Then the video ended with a dramatic caption added by the influencer, "Fat, shamed by a billionaire in public." Harper gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. The bus seemed to tilt, even though it continued along its route. A second clip played automatically right after the first one. People stitching the video, reacting to it, offering commentary as if they knew her, as if they knew the truth. A woman with a huge platform frowned at the camera, saying, "I am tired of rich men thinking they can insult plus-size women for sport." A college student responded with, "Seriously, what kind of monster says that?" Another said he should be cancelled immediately. Another chimed in with, "He is a billionaire, so of course he thinks he can say whatever he wants." A man declared, "This is what is wrong with society, and men like him are proof." She kept scrolling, unable to stop, unable to breathe. Dress girl, fat shame billionaire. Boycott Ward Tech. The tags multiplied, each one more painful than the last. One tweet had blown up with more than 50,000 likes in under an hour. It said, "I do not know who she is, but she deserves better than this." Another said this poor girl was humiliated in front of everyone. Someone else posted pictures of Declan at charity events with captions like, "Guess he does not practice what he preaches." Harper closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the avalanche of voices. They did not know her. They did not know him. They had no idea what she felt in that moment when their eyes met. She did not feel mocked. She did not feel targeted. She felt something else entirely, something she could not yet explain even to herself, something that had nothing to do with cruelty, and everything to do with the assurance she had sensed behind his voice. But the internet had decided for her. The narrative had been written, and she was the main character in a story she never asked to join. The bus hummed around her passengers chatting softly. A toddler crying in the back, a man in a raincoat sipping coffee, as if the world were not unraveling on her screen. When the bus reached her stop, she hurried down the wet sidewalk toward her apartment building, a narrow beige structure that smelled faintly of mildew and old carpet. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time, unlocked her door, and collapsed into the small living room, where the lamp cast a soft yellow glow over piles of books and scattered sketches. Her grandmother looked up from her knitted blanket on the couch and asked gently if she was all right. Harper forced a smile, murmured that she was fine, and retreated to her bedroom before the tremble in her voice betrayed her. Inside the dim room, she sat on the edge of her bed, the silence pressing against her chest. She watched the video again, even though every part of her told her not to. She watched the way the camera exaggerated her size, captured her fear, broadcast it to millions. She watched the way Declan stepped in, the way his eyes softened the warmth in his startled laugh, the sincere tilt of his head when he made the impossible statement that would become ammunition for thousands of strangers. She whispered to the empty room, "He was not laughing at me." The truth sat heavy in her chest, yet no one would believe it. She stared at the flood of hateful comments and felt something inside her shrink. But beneath the shrinking, there was a small, stubborn spark, refusing to be smothered. She had lived her entire life being misunderstood. Perhaps this was simply another chapter. She powered off her phone, lay back on the bed, and covered her face with her hands, as the storm of the internet raged on without mercy. The world had chosen its version of events, and Harper Lowe was now the girl behind the viral humiliation. Declan Ward had faced market crashes, hostile investors, and sleepless nights in hospital corridors, while his wife fought an illness that carved grief into the deepest chambers of his chest. But nothing had prepared him for waking up to an avalanche of outrage that painted him as a monster in front of millions. His assistant Natalie called him at 6 in the morning, her voice sharp with panic, as she told him to check his phone immediately. Declan sat up in bed, raking a hand through his hair, as he unlocked his screen and watched his inbox explode with warnings from public relations, legal counsel, and the board of directors. The top email subject line read, "Urgent crisis management required." Beneath it, another said, "Trending scandal, Ward Tech under fire." And then dozens more. He frowned but clicked the most recent message, which held a link to a TikTok video. He tapped it. The clip opened with shaky footage of him standing beside the emerald green dress. The audio captured the influencer girl yelling, "He is a billionaire," as if announcing the arrival of an enemy. Then came the moment that now defined him in the eyes of strangers. "If you can fit in that dress, I will marry you." But the video cut right there, leaving out the subtle warmth in his expression, the protective intention behind his voice, the truth beneath the timing. Instead, the video framed him as cruel and mocking. It was enough. Social media did not need context. Outrage moved faster than facts. Declan watched the stitched reaction videos ballooning by the second. People calling him disgusting, people demanding boycotts, people saying he used his wealth to embarrass a woman who already battled societal cruelty daily. He swallowed hard. He remembered the moment clearly, the way Harper froze, the tremble in her fingers, the weight of humiliation crushing her. He remembered the impulse, sharp and instinctive, to shield her, to redirect the crowd, to give her something outrageous enough to shatter their rhythm. He had laughed only because the idea arrived so suddenly, because he hoped it might break the cruelty pressing down on her. But no one filming knew that. No one watching cared. Natalie arrived at his home within 20 minutes, hair pulled back tight, laptop under her arm, moving with the practiced urgency of someone who handled disasters for a living. "You need to issue a statement," she said without greeting, "and we need to do it before the board demands your presence." Declan shook his head. "A statement will only fan the flames. Not if we craft it carefully," she insisted, but he could see the worry in her eyes. She had been with him long enough to know his instincts usually served him well. But this was bigger than a misinterpreted quote. This was a cultural lightning strike. Declan turned on the television. Morning news anchors spoke over still images of the dress boutique. The headline read, "Billionaire humiliates plus-size woman." Another banner flashed across the bottom, "Ward Tech stock down 2%. The reporter said, "Sources confirm that Ward Tech investors are concerned the scandal could affect ongoing partnerships." A clip of Alara appeared on screen, smiling during a charity gala from years ago. And then the anchor said fans of the late Alara Ward expressed disappointment, claiming that Declan has dishonored her legacy of compassion. Declan's chest tightened, old grief crawling up like a tide. He whispered softly, "That is not who I am." Natalie spoke gently. "Declan, they don't know your story. They don't know Alara, but they will not give you time to explain." A notification chimed on his phone. Ward Tech emergency meeting in 30 minutes. His temples throbbed. He had spent years building his company around medical accessibility technology. Because of Alara's illness, because he had wanted to create something that made the world kinder. Now the world saw him as a villain overnight. Another alert flashed, a trending tweet saying "Cancel Declan Ward," followed by a thread accusing him of misogyny, bullying, and elitism. He scrolled through the replies, each one harsher than the last. Someone posted a picture of him holding an award with the caption "Hypocrite." Another wrote, "Please tell me his company tanks." Someone else said, "That poor girl deserves so much better." Declan exhaled slowly, his breath uneven. He was not angry at the public. He was angry at the truth buried behind their assumptions. He kept seeing Harper's face when she stood in front of that dress, small and hurt, and yet somehow fiercely dignified even in fear. He knew she had not understood his words as cruelty. He had seen it in her eyes, a softness mixed with confusion, but not shame. Yet the internet had twisted everything. Natalie touched his shoulder hesitantly. "Declan, this is going to get worse before it gets better. People think you laughed at her. People think you mocked her size." He shook his head sharply. "I did not laugh at her. I laughed because I needed the room to stop. I needed everyone to look at me instead of her. I know she was drowning in there." Natalie nodded gently. "I know, but they do not. The meeting with the board was brutal. Executives demanded to know if he had lost his mind. One accused him of jeopardizing millions in partnerships. Another suggested a temporary leave of absence. Declan listened silently, jaw-tight hands clasped under the table as accusations swirled around him. When they finally let him speak, he said in a calm, low voice, "I will fix this, somehow." The board was unconvinced. After the call ended, Declan stood by the window, overlooking the gray Seattle skyline. Raindrops slid down the glass, mirroring the fog in his chest. In all the chaos, one thought cut through everything with painful clarity. Harper. Was she safe? Was she being attacked online? Was she blaming him for the unwanted spotlight? The thought made his heartbeat twist. He remembered the way she had whispered "thank you" under her breath. After the moment passed so quiet, he thought he imagined it. He remembered the fear in her eyes, transforming into something like relief. But all of that was lost now, beneath millions of angry views. Declan closed his laptop, letting the silence settle. He knew the internet would move on eventually, but he also knew that Harper might not. She was the one bearing the real weight of the scandal, the weight that his wealth could not shield her from. And in that moment it became clear that he was not just a billionaire under fire. He was a man who needed to make things right before the world crushed someone who did not deserve a single shard of its cruelty. Harper woke up the next morning, feeling as if the world had shifted 10 degrees to the left, slightly off balance, slightly unreal, as though the air itself carried the memory of millions of strangers saying her name. She lay staring at the ceiling in her small bedroom, where old sketches curled at the corners on the walls, and sunlight filtered through blinds in thin stripes that cut across her face, like quiet reminders that life, cruel or kind, still moved forward. Her phone buzzed non-stop on the nightstand, but she did not reach for it. She already knew what waited behind the lock screen, a tsunami of opinions, projections, theories, and judgments from people who had never looked her in the eye, or heard her voice, or known the way silence had shaped her since childhood. She finally sat up, pushed her hair out of her face, and took a long breath, the kind they taught in therapy videos she watched online but never admitted to anyone. She told herself she would reclaim something today, even if it was small. Even if it was only a fraction of her confidence. She opened her journal, the one she barely touched, because writing about herself felt like peeling skin, and she wrote in messy letters, 30 days to find courage. She did not know what she meant by that. She did not know what courage would look like, or whether she even had any left, after the internet had turned her into a symbol against her will. But she knew she needed something to hold on to, something that belonged to her, instead of the strangers stitching narratives around her life. she decided her 30-day courage challenge would not involve weight loss or gym videos or proving anything to anyone about fitting into a dress. Instead, she chose tiny acts of bravery she could manage everyday things that chipped away at the fear she had grown accustomed to carrying in her bones. That first morning, she walked to the small coffee shop on the corner, wearing the bright blue sweater she always hid at the back of her closet because she thought it made her stand out too much. She set her phone on silent and brought a sketchbook instead. She ordered a latte, sat by the window, and drew simple lines that slowly became leaves, then branches, then a tree stretching upward, as if trying to reclaim the sky. She snapped a picture of her sketch and posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Day one small breath at a time." She did not mention the scandal. She did not mention Declan. She did not mention the dress or the boutique. She did not even mention the humiliation. She simply posted something that felt peaceful. To her surprise, the post received comments from strangers who said things like, "This is beautiful," or "I hope you are okay," or "Take your time healing." A few commented that they recognized her from the viral clip, but they spoke gently without judgment. As the day went on, more people followed her. Some messaged privately to say they had been through similar moments of public embarrassment, and that her small act of drawing inspired them. Harper felt touched in ways she could not explain. She posted again the next day, just a photo of her hand resting on her journal with the caption, "Day 2. Today I showed up for myself." More messages came. People saying they admired her restraint, her softness, her willingness to focus on healing rather than revenge. The internet that had mocked her hours earlier was now divided. Some insisted she was milking the scandal. Others argued she was being authentic and brave. A well-known plus-size author reposted Harper's sketch and wrote, "The girl in that dress video does not owe us explanations, but the grace she is showing is teaching me something." That post exploded across platforms, and suddenly millions of people saw Harper as something more than a victim. They saw her as someone who refused to collapse under the weight of the world's cruelty. Meanwhile, Harper avoided all videos and news segments. She still had not watched the reaction clips. She refused to let others dictate her identity. Every morning she woke early, wrote a new entry in her journal, and posted one small moment of courage. On day 3, she drew a bowl of lemons with the caption, "Small things still matter." On day 5, she photographed her dog-eared copy of her favorite novel, saying, "Day 5, letting myself love what I love." On day 7, she posted her hand holding a paintbrush, dipped in soft yellow, telling the world, "Day 7, I chose joy for an hour." Slowly, a community formed around her. People commented, saying her posts felt calming in a world full of noise. Women shared their own tiny moments of courage. A man commented that seeing her find beauty in small things helped him get through a panic attack. Harper read these messages late at night, under the glow of her bedside lamp, and felt something shift inside her. She had spent her whole life believing that she was invisible or that being invisible was safer. Now she realized people did not need her to perform or defend herself. They simply felt connected to her humanity. And in that unexpected tenderness, she felt more seen than she had in years. But with support came pushback. On day 10, someone posted a viral tweet accusing her of using the scandal for social media fame. Someone else said her quiet posts were manipulative. A gossip account claimed she was secretly dating Declan. Harper sighed but kept going. she posted a picture of her closed journal with the caption, "Day 10 today was heavy, but I kept walking." The comments poured in, again, mostly supportive, but a few harsh. The contrast was dizzying. But the next day, something unexpected happened. A large body positivity influencer posted a video analyzing the viral boutique clip frame by frame, saying Declan did not look like he was mocking Harper. The influencer said the store environment was toxic, and the employees looked ready to laugh before Declan spoke. She concluded that the true villains of the moment were the ones who treated Harper as a spectacle. The video went viral, and suddenly, the narrative shifted. People began defending Harper and questioning the shop's behavior. The influencer's followers flocked to Harper's page with messages of solidarity. Comment sections filled with people saying things like, "You deserve better," or "I believe you," or "We saw." The way you looked scared before he spoke. Harper felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of relief and bewilderment. People were beginning to understand that she had not been humiliated by the man, but by the world around them. On day 14, she posted a picture of a small plant on her windowsill, newly sprouted, with the caption, "Day 14 small growth still counts." That image went unexpectedly viral. People reposted it, saying healing can start tiny, just like this. Harper realized she had accidentally become the center of a movement she never intended, to create a movement of quiet bravery, small victories, and choosing kindness in a world built on judgment. On day 20, she recorded a short video of her hands moving over a canvas as she painted soft green strokes reminiscent of the emerald dress. The caption read, "Day 20. I am learning that color can heal." The video amassed hundreds of thousands of views. People stitched it with emotional commentary, calling her the softest revolution. She continued her challenge until the end of the month, gathering people who saw her not as the girl who was mocked in a boutique, but as a woman rediscovering her voice, one gentle step at a time. And slowly she began to believe that maybe she truly was more than the viral moment that tried to define her. Harper had not planned to leave her apartment that morning, but the walls felt too close and her thoughts too loud. So she grabbed her coat and walked to the small independent bookstore on Pine Street, a place filled with creaking wooden floors, gentle music, and the scent of paper that always reminded her of simpler chapters of her life before the internet knew her name. She wandered through the aisles, touching book spines, as if grounding herself in something steady, something unconnected to viral judgment or trending outrage. She found a quiet corner near the poetry section and sat on the floor with a collection of Mary Oliver poems open on her lap, letting the soft words settle around her like a balm. For the first time in days, she felt the tiniest hint of peace. Then the bell above the door chimed. She did not look up at first. People came and went through this shop constantly, and she had grown accustomed to blending into the background. But the shift in the room was impossible to ignore. A hush rippled through the bookstore, a vacuum of curiosity and recognition. Harper lifted her head slowly, and the air in her chest seized because standing near the front door, scanning the room with weary eyes, was Declan Ward. He looked different from the video and different from the cold headlines. He looked tired, older than his 36 years, weighed down by sleepless nights and the crushing pressure of the world's misinterpretation. His usually immaculate hair was messy from the wind, and his coat dusted with raindrops. Yet there was a sincerity in his expression that struck her like a pulse of electricity. Harper panicked for a moment, wondering if she should hide behind a shelf or slip out the back door. But before she could move, he spotted her. Their eyes met across the room, and her breath vanished. Declan walked toward her slowly, cautiously, as if afraid the wrong step might send her running. When he reached her aisle, he offered a gentle nod and said in a low voice, "Harper, may I talk to you for a moment?" Hearing her name in his voice made the world tilt again, but this time not from fear. She closed the book on her lap hands, trembling slightly, and nodded. They stepped toward a corner of the store where the soft jazz soundtrack muffled their conversation. Declan kept a polite distance, his posture respectful, his expression apologetic. "I came to say I am sorry," he said quietly, "not for what people think I said, but for what this moment has turned into for you." Harper looked up at him, surprised by the raw honesty in his tone. "You do not owe me an apology," she whispered, but he shook his head firmly. "I owe you more than one. You did not ask for any of this, and you deserve better than becoming a target of my scandal." She swallowed and felt emotion burning at the back of her throat. "I know you were not mocking me," she finally said. "I knew it the moment you spoke. I just wish everyone else could see it too." Declan's shoulders sagged with relief, as if her words lifted a weight he had been carrying alone. "Thank you," he murmured. Then he looked down, his voice softening. "I saw how they were treating you in that store. I just wanted the attention off you, even if only for a moment." Harper nodded, and for a second they simply breathed in the same quiet corner, their silence not awkward, but full of understanding. But peace lasted only 3 seconds. A camera shutter clicked sharply behind them. Harper flinched and turned. A young paparazzi photographer crouched behind a bookshelf, filming them with a long lens. Another person lifted their phone, whispering excitedly to TikTok that she had found Dress Girl with the Billionaire. Within seconds, 3 more people raised their phones. Someone gasped loudly near the front of the store, shouting, "That is them." Harper and Declan froze. The intimate space around them shattered into noise, footsteps, hushed curses, whispered commentary. Declan's jaw tightened, but he stepped instinctively closer to shield Harper from the sudden attention, just as he had tried to do the first time. But cameras kept flashing. One girl announced live to her stream, "They are together. Look, they are hiding in the bookstore." Harper felt heat rush to her cheeks, panic clawing its way up her throat. She murmured, "No, no, no, not again." But there was no stopping it. The moment left the bookstore before she even took her next breath. Declan whispered softly, "I am sorry, let us step outside. We can leave before this gets worse." But it was already too late. The first article hit Twitter before they made it to the door. "Dress Girl seen with Declan Ward again, suspicious timing." Another account posted, "Maybe she is milking this scandal." Comments flooded in faster than Harper could comprehend. People accused her of chasing money, clout, sympathy, attention. Someone wrote, "She is trying to replace Alara." That comment struck Harper like a slap. She did not know all the details of Declan's past, but she had seen the grief in his eyes when the news anchors mentioned his late wife. Harper stumbled a little as they exited the store, her breath unsteady. Declan reached out but stopped himself inches before touching her, as if uncertain whether contact would comfort her or hurt her more. The sidewalk buzzed with rain and tension as people filmed from across the street. Declan lowered his head and guided her away with quiet urgency. Harper felt tears sting her eyes, both from fear and from the cruel accusations twisting in the digital world. When they reached a quieter corner near a parking garage, she finally spoke, her voice fragile. "They think I am replacing your wife." Declan stopped walking, his expression cracked open, revealing grief so deep it silenced the air around them. "Harper, I would never let anyone disrespect her memory, and I would never let anyone attack you for existing in a moment none of us asked for." She wiped a trembling hand across her cheek. "I did not want fame. I did not want this. I was just standing in a store." Declan exhaled slowly, his voice steady with something protective and resolute. "I know, and you do not deserve to be punished for my presence." They stood there under the gray Seattle sky, two strangers bound by misunderstanding and the relentless gaze of an online world that refused to see nuance. Harper finally whispered, "I just wanted peace." Declan's eyes softened. "I know, and I will find a way to give it back to you even if the world keeps fighting us." Cameras clicked again from a distance, and Harper felt her stomach twist with dread. Within minutes, the encounter would be everywhere, and by nightfall, the entire country would have an opinion about a moment that had not even lasted 10 minutes. The encounter had begun hitting headlines before they even parted ways, and neither of them knew that this brief conversation in a bookstore doorway would ignite the kind of storm that reshaped both their lives forever. The internet did not wait for Harper or Declan to breathe before turning their bookstore encounter into a nationwide battleground of opinions. Loyalty wars stitched videos, reaction essays, and live debates, fueled by people who had never met either of them yet, spoke as if they owned the truth. The first wave hit within an hour. Photos taken from across the street spread like wildfire. Harper looking overwhelmed, Declan leaning slightly forward as if protecting her phones raised everywhere. The neon open sign of the bookstore glowing behind them like a stage light. Headlines appeared so quickly it felt choreographed. Dress girl caught cozy with billionaire. Is she playing the victim? Declan Ward meets mystery woman, sparking questions about late wife's legacy. Harper saw the articles when she returned home trembling, exhausted, her coat still damp from the rain. She sat on the floor of her bedroom, scrolling with numb fingers, while notifications exploded so rapidly her phone glitched. People said she was manipulating Declan. People said she was looking for fame. People said she was disrespecting Alara Ward. A hate campaign surfaced from an unexpected place the fan community built around Declan's late wife. Groups posting tribute videos calling Alara an angel accused Harper of trying to replace her. Some accounts compared photos of Alara, graceful, elegant, fragile, with screenshots of Harper in the boutique looking frightened and disheveled. One caption read, "She will never be her." Harper closed her eyes, feeling something inside her bruise. She had never wanted to replace anyone, and certainly not a woman she had heard so many describe with reverence. She whispered to herself, "I did not ask for any of this." But in the chaos, another voice emerged. A large body-positive influencer named Marisol Jade posted a 10-minute video analyzing the entire situation in a calm, steady tone that cut through the noise like sunlight through fog. She played the original boutique video frame by frame, pausing at key moments. At the start, she pointed to Harper's tense posture and whispered apology, saying, "This is not a woman seeking attention. This is a woman wanting to disappear." Then Marisol zoomed in on the store, employees' smirks, and the influencer girl's predatory gleam. Marisol looked into the camera and said Declan Ward did not mock her, he intervened. And anyone who cannot see that is blinded by bias, not truth. The video exploded across every platform. Comments flooded in, some relieved, some angry, some confused. But millions watched as Marisol dismantled the internet narrative piece by piece. Soon other influencers joined in. A plus-size fashion designer said, "I know humiliation when I see it," and he was not the one humiliating her. A licensed therapist posted a video explaining trauma responses and how Harper's instinct to freeze indicated distress, not attention-seeking. Someone stitched a clip showing Declan's face right before he made the dress comment, slowing it down, to reveal an expression that was not mocking but worried deeply, attuned to the fear he saw in Harper. For the first time, strangers said, "Wait, maybe we were wrong." Hashtags began shifting. Justice for Harper. We see you, Harper. Stop the shaming. Stop the narrative. People flooded her Instagram with messages of support. You did nothing wrong. The world was cruel to you, not him. You do not have to defend yourself. One comment made her cry softly into her hands. A woman said, "As someone who has been humiliated in stores more times than I can count, seeing you stand there and survive it gave me courage." At the same time, another wave surged across the internet fans of Declan. Writing threads defending him, people sharing stories of how he funded medical research, built community shelters, or donated anonymously to local clinics. Someone posted screenshots of a foundation he created in Alara's name. The caption read, "Does this look like a man who humiliates women?" But the backlash did not vanish. Trolls doubled down. They accused Harper of using sympathy to get attention. They accused Declan of manipulation. Some said Marisol was being paid, even though she made it clear she had no connection to either of them. It was digital war. Two armies formed on opposite sides of a misunderstanding. Supporters called Harper brave. Critics called her opportunistic. Supporters said Declan was being unfairly villainized. Critics said he deserved cancellation. Harper watched it all unfold, helplessly, feeling both defended and attacked by people she had never met. The emotional whiplash was dizzying. She posted nothing that day except a single photo of raindrops on her window with the caption, "Day 21. The world is loud, but I am taking a breath." It received hundreds of thousands of likes. Her quiet courage had become a kind of beacon. Meanwhile, Declan faced his own avalanche of noise. Reporters camped outside WardTech headquarters. Protesters held signs, some accusing him of cruelty, others defending him. Investors panicked. His board pressured him for a formal apology, even though he insisted an apology for something he did not do would make things worse. Declan refused to release a statement without thinking about Harper and how anything he said might impact her safety. Through the chaos online, conversations grew more complex. People began dissecting the power dynamics of public humiliation. Articles emerged from major outlets saying the boutique employees acted unethically. A thread went viral saying, "Sometimes the internet punishes the wrong person first." Even celebrities chimed in. One actress tweeted, "Leave the girl alone. She is showing more grace than any of us would." A musician posted Declan did nothing except miscommunicate under pressure. And slowly, the internet began choosing sides, not in favor of drama, but in favor of humanity. Harper saw this shift in real time as her messages overflowed with stories from strangers, mothers, daughters, students, teachers, people who said her presence, her gentleness, her refusal to lash out helped them feel less alone. And though she was still scared, still overwhelmed, a part of her felt something bright and trembling at the edges of her heart. Maybe hope, maybe the beginning of taking up space in the world without apologizing for existing. The internet had become a battlefield. But for the first time, Harper was not standing there alone. The leak arrived quietly at first, as most world-changing things do, hidden inside an anonymous message request, buried beneath hundreds of supportive notes and hateful accusations Harper had ignored for days. That night, she sat at her small kitchen table, sipping chamomile tea, trying to calm the ache behind her eyes, when her phone buzzed with a notification from someone she did not follow. The message contained only 4 words: "You need to see this," followed by a link. Harper hesitated, fear curling in her stomach. She had learned the hard way that opening random links could lead to more pain, more edits of the viral video, more people mocking her posture, her reactions, her weight, her silence. But something about the wording felt different, not cruel, not probing, simply urgent. She clicked. A video loaded grainy footage from inside the boutique, captured by the store's security cameras. Her heart pounded as she hit play. The angle was wider than the influencer clip, showing parts of the store that the internet had never seen. The employees stood behind the counter, laughing before she even walked in. The influencer girl adjusted her hair and told her friends in an excited whisper that the boutique had started a new challenge to film plus-size customers' reactions to high-end fashion for TikTok shop engagement. Another girl snorted, saying, "People eat this humiliation content up." The employees laughed with them. Harper covered her mouth in horror, remembering the sting of their stares, the humiliation pressing on her shoulders like a physical weight. She watched herself enter the frame, tentative, quiet, oblivious to the cruel game unfolding around her. The influencer whispered, "There she is. Start recording." The employees exchanged smirks. Harper felt her throat tighten. She watched herself approach the emerald dress, unaware of the trap. The camera showed every detail she never knew the store was baiting her. Then came the moment the influencer zoomed in. Customers turned to stare, staff exchanged knowing glances, and the videographer whispered, "This is going to be gold." But then something unexpected appeared in the footage. Declan entering the store, not casually, but almost urgently, as though pulled in by instinct. He paused upon seeing the crowd around her, his jaw tensing, his expression softening with something that looked painfully familiar, something like the face of a man who recognized someone drowning in public shame, because he had once watched someone he loved drown in private pain. The security camera caught his face in a way the influencer video did not. The worried eyes, the clenched jaw, the subtle panic. And then the most heartbreaking detail surfaced. As Harper stood frozen, staring at the dress, Declan looked at her with an expression almost identical to the one he wore in old footage. During Alaris hospital interviews, a look filled with helplessness and protective urgency. Harper felt tears prick at her eyes. She had not known this part. She had not known the moment triggered something deep inside him. Then came the audio central to the storm. "If you can fit in that dress, I will marry you." But from this camera angle, his face was softer, his tone gentler, the protective intention unmistakable. He was not laughing at her. He was trying to save her from being the target of the crowd by redirecting their attention to himself. The crowd gasped in shock. The influencer squealed, but something else happened. The footage captured the store employees panicking the manager, whispering, "Turn off the camera, turn off the camera," before realizing the influencer's phone was already live. Then the clip ended. Harper stared at her screen, unable to breathe. The message sender wrote again. "I used to work there. They humiliated plus-size customers for content. This was not your fault." She placed her phone on the table, hands trembling as the truth soaked in. She replayed the video once, twice, 3 times, and with each pass, something inside her untangled. She had known in her bones that Declan had not mocked her, but seeing the proof, the full context, the cruelty of the store, the worry etched in his features felt like stepping out of a shadow she had been trapped in for days. She whispered to herself, "He never meant to hurt me." Moments later, her phone exploded with notifications someone else had leaked the footage. A former employee, likely the anonymous messenger, uploaded the full clip to multiple platforms. Twitter erupted within minutes. A hashtag surged to the top, "We were wrong." Influencers posted stunned reactions. A viral comment read, "That store owes Harper a public apology, not Declan." Another said, "He tried to save her, and we crucified him." People began stitching the new footage, comparing the 2 angles, showing how the narrative had been manipulated by the original clip. A journalist tweeted, "Breaking internal footage reveals boutique staged humiliation for views." The entire internet shifted violently. As reactions poured in, another part of the footage went viral. The close-up of Declan's face the moment he recognized Harper's. Fear, the grief-shaped lines around his eyes, matching images of him from Ilara's final months. A well-known grief support advocate wrote his face in that clip is the face of a man remembering trauma, not causing it. Harper felt her heart tighten painfully. She had not known the truth ran this deep. News outlets ran breaking banners. Boutique scandal exposes predatory filming practices. People online demanded apologies for Harper and rediscovered sympathy for Declan. But with vindication came a deeper emotional whirlwind. Harper wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the screen as comments flooded in, saying things like, "I feel so guilty for judging her," and "He deserves an apology from the world," and "She never deserved any of this." Hours later, a trending post appeared showing a side-by-side comparison of Declan looking at Harper in the boutique and Declan looking at Ilara in a hospital interview years ago. The resemblance was undeniable, and for the first time, millions realized the man they had torn apart had acted not from cruelty, but from memory, from grief, from instinct. Harper closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the truth, now exposed to the world. The internet had finally seen what she saw in that moment, and she understood suddenly, deeply painfully, that the misunderstanding had cost both of them far more than anyone had realized. The truth had finally surfaced, yet instead of feeling saved, Harper felt as if she were standing in the middle of a quiet field after a tornado. The world no longer spinning violently, but the debris of everything she had endured still scattered around her feet, sharp enough to cut her if she moved too fast. The internet now defended her and praised Declan. The boutique was officially under investigation, and news anchors apologized for rushing to judgment. But the noise that once crushed her had simply transformed into a different kind of weight, one she could not outrun, no matter how many times she refreshed her feed, hoping for silence. Port felt loud, too painfully loud. Messages poured in from people saying they had misjudged her, from fans of Declan, asking her to protect him from trolls from strangers, begging her to speak publicly. Brands offered her sponsorships. Talk shows wanted interviews. Everyone wanted something from her now. Everyone believed she owed them a narrative. And yet nothing inside her felt healed. That night she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the dim glow of her phone screen, while the newest headline flashed across trending pages. Revenge of the Forgotten Woman Truth reveals Billionaire was hero all along. She winced as if struck. She was not interested in revenge. She never had been. She simply wanted her quiet life back. She wanted to draw sip tea, sit in the bookstore she loved without being chased by cameras. She wanted to breathe without strangers watching. She muted every notification and pressed the phone face down on the sheets. The room fell into a hush that frightened her more than chaos. For days she had been swept along by the violence of public opinion. But now she faced the stillness of her own thoughts, the part she had been avoiding, the part that whispered maybe everything good happening now was only because of him. A sharp ache formed beneath her ribs. She whispered into the dark, "I am not enough for this." A thought she wished she could bury, but it clung stubbornly. Declan had faced catastrophe because of her. She knew it was not her fault, but the guilt still wrapped around her like cold vines. She remembered his tired eyes, the grief that surfaced whenever someone mentioned Elara. She thought of the footage of him in the boutique, the hurt softening his expression, the kind of pain someone carried for years. She wondered if seeing her fear had reminded him of losing his wife, of trying to protect someone he loved and failing. And then a deeper fear rose uninvited, twisting inside her chest, a fear carved from insecurity and a lifetime of feeling lesser than. She thought maybe he saw her through the lens of grief, not for who she was, but for who she was not. Late that night, she opened her journal and wrote a single sentence: "I do not want to be a replacement." She closed it quickly, unable to write more. The next morning, the world celebrated the leaked footage as justice. But Harper felt fragile as she walked into her kitchen where her grandmother made oatmeal, humming quietly, unaware of the online storm. Harper forced a smile, kissed her cheek, and stepped outside, needing air. Seattle was gray, soft rain, misting the sidewalks as she walked aimlessly through Capitol Hill. Passing coffee shops, bookshops, murals bright with color she normally loved. But today, even color felt heavy. She ducked into a small park and sat on a bench beneath a maple tree, its branches drooping with rainwater. She took out her phone, staring at the blank screen, until finally she typed a message to Declan. "Thank you for what you did that day. I saw it in the footage. I know the truth now." She hesitated, fingers trembling, before she added, "You did not deserve what happened." She deleted the last line, typed it again, deleted it again, then finally hit send with just the first sentence. His reply arrived minutes later. Simple, steady, "I am glad you saw it." There was so much I could not explain. She stared at the message, feeling an ache that was not quite sadness, not quite longing, something in between. After several minutes, she typed again, "I hope things calm down for you now." His answer came quickly, "I hope the same for you." And then nothing. A polite conversation, the kind shared by people who meant more to each other than either was willing to admit. Harper pressed her phone against her chest, closing her eyes. She wanted to ask him how he slept, wanted to tell him she felt guilty, wanted to ask if he hated being connected to her, if she was hurting him by staying silent. But she said nothing. Fear sat between them, an invisible wall. She feared he saw her as fragile. She feared he felt responsible for her. She feared she had become a symbol, not a person. She feared that part of him had looked at her in that boutique and seen a ghost of Alara instead of seeing Harper, the woman she truly was. She spent the next several days avoiding the internet and avoiding him, though her heart pulled toward him in a way that felt unsteady and unfamiliar. She focused instead on her art, on her quiet courage challenge. Though even drawing felt harder now, with the pressure of countless eyes watching her page. One evening she posted a single photo of a nearly blank canvas, the caption reading, Day 25. I am trying to remember who I was before the noise. The comment section exploded with tenderness. People telling her she was enough, that she was not defined by strangers, that healing was not linear. It should have comforted her, but instead, it made her feel exposed, seen in ways she did not feel ready for. She realized she had spent her entire life learning how to disappear, and now the world demanded she stand in the light. And somewhere in the middle of that battle, she began pulling away from Declan, not because he hurt her, but because the possibility of mattering to him terrified her more than any viral clip ever could. She whispered one night when she could not sleep, I do not want to be loved out of pity or grief. And she feared that maybe, just maybe, he felt something for her, because she reminded him of pain he could not fix in the past. She feared that whatever had sparked between them in those quiet moments was not real. And so as the storm outside quieted the storm in her heart, rose louder than ever before, becoming the one thing she did not know how to escape. Harper had avoided downtown for nearly 2 weeks, letting the city move without her as she hid inside the quiet corners of her neighborhood, but something inside her shifted on a calm Thursday afternoon, when the rain paused long enough for pockets of sunlight to spill onto the pavement like scattered gold. She stood at her window, watching the light shimmer over puddles, feeling a tug deep in her chest, subtle but steady, calling her back to the place where everything had begun, not out of vengeance, not out of curiosity, but out of a need to reclaim something she did not fully understand. She slipped on her coat, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the bus stop, without letting herself overthink it. The ride downtown felt surreal, the bus vibrating gently, carrying her past familiar streets that looked different now because she was different now, both bruised and stronger, in ways she had not expected. When she stepped off near Westlake Center, her heart thudded heavily in her chest as the boutique came into view, its glossy windows reflecting the city like a hollow apology. The scandal had hit it hard. The once bustling storefront was nearly empty. The influencer girl who had filmed her was gone. The employees who had smirked at her were replaced. The air itself felt stripped of cruelty, replaced with an odd, sterile hush, as if the store had been scrubbed of its own guilt. Harper paused at the door, taking one deep breath before stepping inside. The boutique lights glowed softly, illuminating rows of expensive dresses, none of which intimidated her the way they once had. She walked slowly, almost reverently past mannequins draped in silk and satin, till she reached the center of the store. The emerald dress still hung there slightly, repositioned slightly dimmer, but undeniably the same. The one that had witnessed everything, the one that had unknowingly become part of her story. She stood before it, feeling the world narrow into a quiet bubble, the fear that once crushed her replaced by something calmer, steadier, more grounded. Harper touched the fabric gently, fingertips grazing the cool, smooth surface. She whispered to herself, "It is just a dress, not a measure, not a verdict, not a dare. Just fabric, just green, just beautiful." Her eyes softened. She remembered how she had frozen in place weeks earlier, overwhelmed by attention, cruelty, and shame. But now she felt none of that, or rather she felt it, but it no longer owned her. Slowly, deliberately, she removed her coat, heart pounding, with a kind of courage she had built day by day, breath by breath. She took the dress off its hanger and stepped into a fitting room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The small space was lined with mirrors reflecting her from all angles. She knew what would happen. She knew the dress would not fit. The bodice was structured for a much smaller frame, and she had made no attempt to change herself to fit its shape. But she slipped it over her head anyway, letting the fabric fall against her skin. It caught at her waist, refusing to go further. She did not force it. She simply stood there looking at herself in the mirror, wearing the emerald fabric halfway, the color glowing softly against her skin. For the first time, she did not see inadequacy. She saw a woman who had survived the worst weeks of her life, a woman who had turned humiliation into quiet resilience, a woman who had built a movement of softness in a world obsessed with spectacle. She whispered to her reflection, "I fit in my life. That is enough." Her eyes glistened, and she laughed softly at the unexpected tenderness of the moment. She slipped out of the dress, carefully hung it back up, and stepped out of the fitting room. But the world had followed her. A soft shutter click echoed from across the store. Harper turned sharply, heart lodging in her throat. A paparazzi photographer stood near the accessory display. His camera half raised his face, guilty as if caught in a forbidden act. Harper stiffened, bracing for another invasion. But the photographer spoke quickly, his voice trembling slightly. "I am sorry, I did not mean to intrude." He lowered his camera fully. "I was just passing by. When I saw you walk in, I thought people would want to know you are okay." Harper said nothing, her chest rising and falling in sharp breaths. The man swallowed visibly, then added, "You do not have to worry. I did not take photos of you in the dress. I only caught you looking at it. And it was beautiful, not in a scandal way, but in a healing way." She blinked, stunned by his sincerity. He hesitated before slipping out of the boutique, leaving her alone again. Harper exhaled slowly, a soft, trembling sound escaping her lips. When she turned back toward the dress, someone stood there. Declan. Her breath stilled. He stood quietly near the mannequin, his hands in his coat pockets. His expression unreadable, but his eyes warm, soft, focused entirely on her. She had not heard him come in. She had not expected him at all. For a brief moment, the world dissolved into the space between them, a space pulsing with all the things they had not said. Declan finally stepped forward, his voice low and cautious. "I saw the photographer outside. I followed him in to make sure he did not corner you again." Harper managed a small, shaky smile. He did not. He apologized, actually. Declan's eyes flickered with surprise, then relief. "I am glad." Silence settled around them, gentle, not fragile this time, but steady. His gaze drifted to the dress, then back to her. "You came back," he said softly. She nodded, looking down briefly, then meeting his eyes again. "I did. I needed to." His voice was almost a whisper. "Did you try it on?" She nodded again, her cheeks warming. "It did not fit. I knew it would not, but I do not think that was ever the point." Her words lingered between them, tender, powerful, true. Declan's eyes softened the way they had in the boutique weeks earlier, but this time without fear, without grief, only quiet admiration. Harper continued, I needed to see it again to prove something to myself, that I am not defined by a dare or a video or a misunderstanding, that I do not have to fit into impossible spaces to deserve peace. Declan swallowed visibly, his voice rougher. You never had to prove anything, not to them, not to me. Another pause, a deeper one. Then he added, not even to yourself. Something warm unfurled inside her chest. A feeling she had tried to bury, but it rose now, shimmering, steady, undeniable. Harper whispered, thank you for coming. Declan shook his head slowly, his eyes locked on hers. I did not come for the dress. Harper felt her breath catch. Something in his gaze held hers in place, wrapped it gently, kept it safe. He continued, I came because you matter, and I wanted to make sure today would not hurt you the way that day did. The world outside hummed softly beyond the boutique glass, but in that moment, Harper felt grounded, anchored in the truth that the misunderstanding that tore them apart had also carved a space for them to meet again, not as symbols or victims or villains, but as two people standing in front of an emerald dress that no longer had power over either of them. For a long moment, Harper and Declan simply stood there in the soft glow of the boutique lights, neither speaking, neither looking away, both suspended in the kind of silence that holds more truth than words ever could. Harper felt her pulse thrum in her throat, not out of fear but something gentler, something terrifying in its gentleness, because she had spent so many years protecting herself from hope that she no longer recognized what it felt like when hope slipped back in uninvited. Declan shifted slightly as if grounding himself before he spoke, his voice low, steady, but touched with an emotion he did not try to hide. Harper, there is something I have wanted to explain to you since that first day in the store, but everything spiraled too fast. She nodded, barely breathing. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself. When I walked into that boutique, I had not planned to stop. I was only passing through on my way to a meeting. But then I saw you. I saw the way they were watching you. And it was like watching something I had lived before, something I swore I would never let happen again. Harper swallowed her chest tight. She already knew he was thinking of Alara, but hearing it out loud softened something inside her instead of wounding it. Because his grief did not overshadow her presence, it only explained the depth of his instinct. He continued quietly. When my wife was sick, people stared at her. They whispered around her. They treated her like she was fragile or strange or already gone. And I never forgot the helplessness of standing beside someone you want to protect, while the world chooses to be cruel. Harper felt her eyes sting, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. Declan stepped closer, not too close, just enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him like a small sun on a cold day. When I saw you in that circle of people, he said softly, their laughter felt so familiar I reacted without thinking. I wanted them to look at me and leave you alone. I never meant to embarrass you. I never meant to create a spectacle. I just could not watch someone hurt in front of me again. Harper pressed her lips together, fighting the ache in her throat. Declan lowered his gaze briefly, his voice quiet, as if confessing something he had carried too long. I failed Alara many times in those final months, not in the ways people think, but in the ways that mattered to me. I could not save her from her illness, but I also could not save her from being seen as something other than who she was. A soft exhale escaped him. And when I saw fear in your eyes that day, it hit me harder than I expected. Harper felt her heart tremble, a fragile, tender trembling that held understanding rather than pain. Declan lifted his eyes again, and for the first time there was no wall between them. Just raw truth. I have been afraid that everything you have endured because of the video would make you hate me. Harper shook her head quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. I never hated you. I was overwhelmed. I was scared, I was confused, but I never hated you. He stared at her as if hearing those words rewrote something within him. She took a slow breath, her voice growing steadier. But I did pull away, not because of what you did, because I did not want to be a reflection of your grief or an echo of someone you loved. I did not want to feel like you cared about me because I reminded you of her. Declan froze, his expression breaking open with something sharp and tender at the same time. Harper continued, afraid but honest. I need to be seen as myself, not anyone else. Not a symbol, not a victim, not a memory. Me. Only me. Declan stepped closer now. Close enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet his eyes. His voice was soft but firm, full of certainty rather than hesitation. Harper, I did not see Alara when I looked at you. I saw someone standing alone when she should not have been. I saw someone worth defending, someone whose quiet strength deserved better than the way the world treated her. And if I felt something in that moment, it was not grief, it was clarity. Her breath caught. Clarity. He nodded slowly, eyes locked on hers. Yes, clarity. That you are the first person in a very long time who made me feel something that was not tied to pain. Something new, something alive. Harper felt warmth spread through her like sunlight melting frost. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked, so she simply breathed instead, letting the moment settle over them like a blanket. Declan continued gently. I do not want anything from you that comes from pity or confusion or pressure from the internet. I want whatever we choose to be ours, something private, something real, something untouched by headlines. Her throat tightened. She whispered, and what if I do not know what I am ready for? Declan smiled softly, the kind of smile that asked nothing but offered everything. Then we take it slow, he said, as slow as you want, as slow as you need. But I am not going anywhere unless you ask me to. Harper felt a single tear slip down her cheek, and she wiped it quickly, embarrassed. But Declan reached out very slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed his thumb gently along her cheek. The touch was feather-light, respectful, full of unspoken promises. Harper leaned subtly into his hand, not much, but enough for him to understand. She was not afraid of him. Not anymore. Declan whispered her name like a vow. Harper. She breathed his reply like surrender. Declan. In the quiet boutique surrounded by dresses and soft lighting, and the lingering echo of a rumor that once tore their worlds apart, something shifted between them, not dramatic, not rushed, simply unmistakable. A quiet understanding that whatever this was, it had returned not because of a misunderstanding, but in spite of one. Love did not crash into them loudly. It returned gently, unexpectedly, like a familiar warmth stepping back into a room where it had always belonged. In the weeks that followed their quiet conversation in the boutique, something remarkable happened. Something no strategist, no journalist, no influencer could have predicted. The scandal that had nearly destroyed Harper and almost dismantled Declan's public identity began transforming into something else, not by force, not by PR manipulation, but through the simplest, most human truth. People were desperate for a story that did not end in cruelty. They wanted healing. They wanted to believe that strangers could still choose kindness. It started with a single comment on one of Harper's posts where she shared a photo of her paint-stained fingertips resting lightly on a canvas. Someone wrote, "You do not need to fit into a dress to deserve love." Then another person replied, "You need to fit into your own life." Those words caught fire. People repeated them, stitched them, remixed them. And within hours, the phrase became a hashtag flooding timelines everywhere. Fit in your life. At first, Harper stared at the hashtag in disbelief, never imagining something born from her pain could become a beacon for thousands. But every hour more stories poured in. Women posted photos of themselves wearing clothes society told them they should not wear. Men shared confessions of feeling invisible or unworthy. Teens shared journal entries about anxiety, about hiding themselves, about wanting to feel seen without being mocked. Some posts carried humor, some carried grief, all of them carried truth. Soon, TikTok feeds were full of people saying, "Today I chose to fit into my life by wearing what I love," or "Today I took a walk alone and felt proud," or "Today I told someone no for the first time." The movement grew with a kind of sincerity that algorithm-driven trends rarely possessed, because this one did not ask people to change themselves, to shrink, to mold, to transform. It asked them to exist as they were. Meanwhile, Declan watched quietly from the edges of social media, keeping his presence subtle, so the spotlight remained on Harper and the movement that had blossomed around her courage. When journalists tried to pull him into interviews, he declined. "This is Harper's moment," he told Natalie firmly. "Not mine." But Harper did not see it that way. She knew the truth. The movement sparked from a misunderstanding, but it ignited because both she and Declan refused to fuel the cycle of anger the internet had expected. Instead, they offered gentleness in a world addicted to outrage. One evening, Harper received an invitation from a nonprofit organization focused on mental health, asking if she would appear as a guest speaker for a virtual event about self-worth and public shame. She almost declined, fear tightening her chest, but Declan's voice lingered in her memory. "We take it slow. Only what feels right." So instead of saying no, she replied, "Can I speak for 10 minutes? The organization responded, "Absolutely," and with overwhelming excitement. Harper spoke softly during the event, her voice trembling at first, but steadier with each sentence. She said, "I am not here because I survived a scandal. I am here because I learned something important." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "You do not have to fit into a dress or an expectation or a role to deserve respect. You only have to fit into your own life." That clip went viral, not in the chaotic, destructive way the first video had, but in the way lanterns spread light across a dark field, warm, intentional, beautiful. Celebrities reposted her words. Teachers played the clip in classrooms. Therapists recommended her 30-day courage challenge to clients. A senator tweeted her message, saying mental health begins with dignity. Harper found herself standing at the center of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. And Declan, watching from afar, felt pride tighten in his throat. He had watched her bloom, not into someone new, but into the person she had always been, the person he had seen beneath the fear that first day. But with growth came questions. People wanted more from her. Sponsors offered partnerships. Publishers inquired about a memoir. Talk shows begged for appearances. Harper felt overwhelmed again, but this time she had support not just from strangers, but from the small, quiet, grounding presence of Declan. They spoke often now, not always about the past, sometimes about her art, sometimes about books, sometimes about the way Seattle rain seemed to carry its own language, sometimes about his foundation for medical accessibility. One evening he told her that he wanted to help fund a project that aligned with her message, a program providing free art therapy sessions for young adults struggling with a body image and public shame. Harper blinked in surprise, her heart expanding with something warm and bright. "You want to do that," she whispered. Declan nodded gently. "You started something meaningful. I want to help strengthen it." Together they crafted the beginnings of what would become the Fit in Your Life initiative, a movement that would partner with schools, community centers, and online platforms to support people learning to accept themselves one small moment at a time. When the announcement went live, accompanied by a soft minimalist video of Harper painting green strokes across a canvas, the internet exploded again. But this time in celebration, not scandal. Comment sections filled with messages of gratitude, of hope, of joy. A well-known talk show host said, "This is the first viral story in a long time that ends in healing instead of destruction." Harper felt humbled, stunned, honored, but uncertain. She asked Declan quietly, "Are we doing the right thing?" His answer was simple. If it brings someone peace, then yes. As the movement grew beyond them, beyond Seattle, beyond the initial scandal, Harper realized something profound. She was no longer running from the viral moment. She was rewriting it. She was reclaiming it. And every time she saw someone post today, "I fit into my life," she felt her heart lift. This was not a story of humiliation anymore. It was a story of transformation, born not from revenge or spectacle, but from a single misunderstood moment that revealed two things the world desperately needed: courage and compassion. The scandal had created a movement, but the movement had created something even more unexpected: a space for Harper and Declan to step toward each other, not as symbols, but as two people, learning that healing could sometimes start with a misunderstanding and blossom into something deeper, something that felt suspiciously like love. 1 year later, the gallery smelled of fresh paint and soft pine lighting the air with a warmth that steadied Harper's heartbeat as she stepped into the center of the exhibition hall. People filled the space in quiet admiration, moving from one canvas to another, taking in the deep greens and muted blues that had become her signature. Since the scandal that once shattered her life gently reshaped her future, her art had grown from private therapy into a public voice, each piece exploring the journey of belonging, not to a dress, not to an expectation, but to oneself. Night marked her first solo exhibition, a milestone she had once considered impossible till she learned to stand inside her own life without shrinking. The gallery lights flickered subtly across the paintings, each reflecting a fragment of her past: the courage challenge, the viral misunderstanding, the quiet healing, the movement. One painting in particular drew repeated attention, an abstract swirl of emerald paint, streaked with gold, titled "The Day I Tried It On." People whispered theories about its meaning, not knowing it was simply her reclaiming the part of her story that had almost destroyed her. Harper stood with her hands lightly clasped, breathing in the murmurs, the footfalls, the subtle hum of admiration that did not make her uneasy now. Instead, it grounded her. She belonged here fully, completely, undeniably. Natalie rushed toward her with a delighted grin, her long braids swinging. "You have a full house, Harper. And a line outside. Harper's cheeks flushed. That still feels surreal. Natalie laughed softly. Girl, this is your night. Let yourself have it. Harper exhaled deeply, soaking in the moment. She glanced around, scanning the room. She had not seen him yet. Declan had promised he would come, but she knew how unpredictable his schedule could be, and she had told herself not to rely on it, not to tie the success of tonight to anyone but herself. Still, her heart searched. She wandered toward a painting of a single green brushstroke, stretched across a canvas titled Something Unexpected, hoping movement would steady her growing anticipation. She paused, taking in the silence around that particular piece. It was one of her favorites because it felt honest, simple, unpolished. A reflection of that quiet turning point the day she realized courage was not loud. It was a whisper that kept returning. She turned slightly and froze. Declan stood across the room, his dark suit catching the soft glow of the gallery lights. His expression gentle as he studied one of her paintings. He had arrived silently as he often did, moving with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was, but chose not to impose it on others. Harper's pulse softened, warming into something steady and familiar. She approached him slowly, letting herself enjoy the sight of him here in her space, not as a billionaire, not as a figure from a scandal, but as the person who had held a part of her journey with sincere respect. Declan looked up before she reached him, as if he sensed her. His eyes warmed the way they always did when he saw her, a subtle shift that softened the edges of the world. "Harper?" he said, his voice soft, reverent. "This is incredible." She smiled shyly. "Thank you for coming." He shook his head, a small disbelieving gesture, as his gaze moved over the room again. "I would not have missed this for anything." She felt her chest expand painfully, beautifully. They stood side by side, quietly taking in the art, the murmurs, the soft clinking of glasses. For a moment, it felt like the world had slowed, placing them in the center of something luminous. Declan turned to her, his voice low. "I wanted to tell you something tonight, but I did not want to interrupt your moment." Harper felt a flutter of anticipation. "What is it?" He hesitated, not out of fear but out of respect, choosing his words slowly. "Do you remember what I said that first night in the boutique, that I did not come for the dress?" She nodded. He exhaled softly. "I still mean that. And I need you to know something else. This has never been about a dare or a misunderstanding. It has always been about the way you walk back into your life, even after the world tried to push you out of it." Harper felt her breath catch. Declan stepped closer, just enough that she could feel his warmth, but not enough to overwhelm her. His voice softened further. "And tonight, watching you here, seeing what you built from something that could have broken you, I realized something." She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "Realized what?" "That I do not want to wait any longer to tell you the truth." He swallowed the emotion behind his eyes, both vulnerable and steady. "You changed something inside me, Harper. Something I thought grief had closed forever. And I do not want to spend another year pretending that what I feel is anything less than real." Her heartbeat fluttered painfully, beautifully. Declan reached into his coat pocket, slowly, deliberately, and for a moment she thought her knees might give out. He did not pull out a box. No ring, no velvet, no theatrics. Just a simple folded sheet of paper, aged at the edges like something carried for a long time. He held it out to her gently. Harper frowned, curious. "What is this?" Declan's voice softened. "A promise." She unfolded it slowly, revealing a handwritten note in his handwriting neat, but trembled just slightly. It read, "I do not want to marry the girl the world mocked. I want to marry the woman who taught me to breathe again." Harper's breath cracked audibly, a soft broken sound that held awe and disbelief and something deeper, aching with tenderness. Declan whispered, so only she could hear, "I am not proposing tonight. Not like this. Not rushed. Not under pressure. I am giving you what I should have given you from the start. Choice, time, freedom, and the truth that when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I will be here." She looked up, tears filling her eyes, making the gallery lights shimmer. Declan stepped closer, his voice barely above a breath. "This promise is not about a dress or a viral moment or anything the world expected. It is about you. Just you." Harper did not speak. She simply stepped into him, slowly, gently placing her forehead against his chest, letting herself feel the strength, the warmth, the safety. Declan's arms rose cautiously, then closed around her with reverence, as if holding something sacred. In the center of a gallery, filled with paintings born from courage and vulnerability, Harper realized something quietly profound. She was no longer the girl from the dress. She was a woman, standing in her own life completely and unquestionably. And the love waiting for her was not loud or demanding or conditional. It was steady like breath, like art, like truth. A promise not about a dress, but about the future she finally believed she deserved. If this story found you at a moment when you needed a reminder that your worth has never depended on a dress, on a number, on a stranger's opinion, or on the loudest voice in the room, then take a deep breath and stay with me for a moment, because the truth at the heart of Harper's journey is the same truth. So many of us forget, when life gets loud, you are allowed to take up space, allowed to exist without apology, allowed to rebuild without permission, and allowed to be seen without shrinking. And if you felt even a flicker of recognition, anywhere in this story, maybe in the humiliation, maybe in the courage, maybe in the slow, quiet healing, then I hope you know that this channel exists for you. For every person who has ever been underestimated, dismissed, overlooked, talked over, or made to believe. They had to earn the right to stand in their own life with their head high. Harper's journey is not just a romance story, and not just a billionaire scandal, and not just a viral misunderstanding. It is a reminder that no one, not a billionaire, not a bully, not a stranger online, gets to define you, only you do. And if any part of you is ready to take one step, big or small, back toward the life you deserve, then this community is where you belong, because here we tell stories not just to entertain, but to heal, to remind you of your strength, and to give you a place where your voice matters and your presence is welcome. Whether you are watching from a small apartment in the middle of the night, from a busy dorm room, from a quiet car on your lunch break, or from a living room filled with noise and chaos, you are part of this journey now. And if you want more stories like this, stories that blend vulnerability with courage, romance with healing, heartbreak with rebirth, then please hit subscribe, because the next story might be the one that changes something inside you, the way this one did for Harper, and if you feel called to do. So comment below, tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what part of the story hit you the hardest. Tell us whether you see a bit of yourself in Harper or in Declan, or in the moment she looked in the mirror and finally saw someone worth staying. For your comment might be the one that lifts someone else tonight, because your story matters too more than you know. And if you want to help this message spread, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that healing is not loud, perfection is not required, and courage often looks like simply trying again tomorrow finally. If you believe, as this channel believes, that every woman, every man, every person deserves a life where dignity is not asked for, but lived where confidence comes from, truth not fear, and where love begins, with self-compassion, then leave a like, because every like tells the algorithm to show this message to someone who might desperately need it today. Thank you for being here, for reading and listening and feeling with us. Thank you for choosing kindness, courage, and connection in a world that often forgets how much they matter. We will be here tomorrow with another story, another journey, another reminder that you are enough and always have been. And until then, remember this one simple truth: your worth was never up for debate.